Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
You're probably not going to hear Chris today because he's not in the building, so that would be a good reason why we're not going to hear him. But we are going to hear from all our wonderful callers, and we thank each and every one of you for calling in and being a part of Under the Hood. You can reach us at 866-594-4150. And we'll get you on the air, and we're going to do that right away. We're just going to jump right into this thing, and we're going to talk to Ken in Idaho with a 95 TBird. Hello, Ken.
Hey, good morning, fellas.
How you doing?
I got a little problem with my... Good.
But your car, not so
I got a
good.
problem with... Yeah. What it is the AC on it. The compressor runs but will not shut off as far as like when it's doing it, it doesn't cycle anymore. It just stays running.
Sure.
It's cool, fine. But, that's going to burn that compressor up, isn't it, if I keep using it?
Well, it can. And what might be going on is it might not, even though it's cooling and it appears pretty good, depending on your weather right now, it might not be great. It might be cooling to its maximum ability, which is perfect for the temperatures you're having outside right now. But if it needs to do any more humidity, warmer temperatures, it may not be able to do it. So it might be low on charge a little bit, which means it could cool really well right now, but it won't cool when it needs that little extra load put on it. And also it's not going to cycle because it can't cool any further in order to get those low side temperatures down enough for it to cycle. Did it work well last year for you, last season?
Well, I never really used the car last year. I just kind of kept it in storage, so I can't really comment on that.
Sure.
I'm getting ready to take a long trip with it, and I noticed that compressor just continues to run. Where my other Ford that I got, it cycles on and off. Clicks on and off.
Sure.
This one's not.
I would say if I had this car and you were in our shop as a customer, I'd say, well, here's the first thing we're going to do. Let's put some gauges on it, hook our machine to it, and watch the gauges and see where the pressures go. And if I see that they don't look quite right, and I check the temperatures and I don't see that they're quite right at the hoses there at the evaporator and the condenser, I am going to suggest that we recharge it. We're going to evacuate it, recharge it. It might just be a little low. It is a 95, so it's got some years on it. It might have leaked out over the years just a tiny little bit, especially in the winter. Seals shrink when it gets cold, and the gas flows out, air flows in, and you get these problems. So do a recharge on it first. That could be the fix-all for everything. That might take care of all your problems, might start cycling again and working. But if you're correct, if you do leave it too long, it will eventually cause a problem. If it's running continuously like that, that's not so much the problem because it wouldn't be under a huge load. If it was low, the problem would be that it's low on refrigerant, which also means it's low on oil, and it's not carrying that refrigerant oil around.
And Russ, that is the most likely suspect, that you're leading with on that for sure. I guess help me understand for others that are listening too. If you got that in the shop and found out that the system was full and it seemed like it was charged properly, and it was a bad cycling switch or sensor or something like that, in a 95 TBird, is there an easy way to identify that?
Oh, sure. If you find that you've got a full charge on it, then our next step would be to unplug the cycling switch. And if it shuts down, then we're going to go right to that switch and test it. We'll watch and see when the pressures come down low enough on the low side to cycle. And, and that one might be 20, let's just say the book says 26 pounds on it or something like that. If we see that we're at 22 pounds, that thing's ice cold, starting to freeze up, and it's not cycling, and I put my meter right across the prongs on that switch, and it shows that thing's still closed, I know that switch is bad. So I'm just going to unscrew it and screw another one on and plug it in, and it's fixed.
Because there are things like that will happen, but you're leading with the most likely culprit with that age of vehicle.
Yeah, most likely it's going to be low on refrigerant, but it could also be that it's that. If it gets too low, you'll have the opposite problem. It won't cool very well at all, and it'll stay engaged all the time, or it just won't engage at all.
Because those switches and such are on there to protect the system from itself so that it doesn't build up so much heat. If it just kept pumping and pumping and pumping, it's there to protect itself. So Definitely want to get that checked out before your long trip. If it's not cycling at all and you don't see that it ever is, you definitely want to get that checked out. You've noticed something that could cause you a problem on the trip.
Otherwise, how do you like the T-Bird?
Oh, love it. Yeah, it's a great car. I've had absolutely no problems with it, period. It's just, she's pretty much a sweetheart, just runs and runs and runs. It gives this is the first problem I've run into with it. So
yeah, those were pretty good cars. When I was working at a dealership, we had a lot of those come through there, and they just didn't break. They were a very, very tough car. People would buy them and keep them for 300, 350, 400,000 miles, and they would just keep going and going and going. It's kind of like the Chevy Impala. You get the rear wheel drive car like that. There's just not much there. You got a couple ball joints up front that could wear. You got a rear end in the back and a drive shaft. Just pretty much any of those old. It was a take on an older car when we used to have a lot of rear wheel drives like that that didn't last forever because the parts weren't very strong. Like if you had like 70s and early 80s Impalas and LTDs and things, but once you got up to 95, the parts got much better and stronger. So with that same platform but better parts, they just seem to last forever and ever. There's still a lot of them on the road. So, well, thanks for calling us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, fellas.
Take care. Oh, I love those old T-Birds. They were pretty cool. And then they had the bigger option over that. They had the SC, the Super Coupe.
I just walked by one of them the other day that we've kept out in the main full service yard. We've got one in row 26, and I just walked by it the other day. I'm like, oh, I did tell him to keep that because it was kind of an odd car. It's still sitting there.
Well, and you never know what you're going to have. You make those decisions. Do I keep it? Do I get rid of it? And then you keep it for a couple years and you forget about it. And all of a sudden somebody says, hey, we just sold the ashtray out of the,
it wouldn't be the
95 Super Coupe. And you're like, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, and by the way, we sold 20 other little tiny miscellaneous parts we never thought we'd sell.
Yeah, it's just one of them things that you just see the car and you're just like, I can't. I got to keep it. It's unique.
They're fun, so that's just the way it is. Well, this is the End of the Hood Show. I am Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom. You can reach us at 866-594-4150. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. The End of the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. This is Russ Evans, along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
And again, we're going to jump right back into the phone. You can get us on the phone as well by calling 866-594-4150. We'd love to talk to you and help you out with your car problems, your questions, whatever it may be. Call us with a classic car question, and you may be the winner of a hoodie. You never know what might come up, what I've got up my sleeve today. But right now, we're just going to jump in and talk to Jake about a 2017 Expedition. Hello, Jake.
Hey, so I got a 2017 Ford Expedition, and I'm losing a little bit of coolant. It's actually getting to be quite a bit now. And when I start it, I get a little bit of white smoke, but then it goes away. Or more like condensation, not white smoke.
Well, anytime in a modern, I'm going to say a modern, how do I describe this? A vehicle that's from the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's modern.
It should not be, as a rule, adding coolant should be not part of your routine on a daily, weekly basis, monthly basis.
Never.
The coolant system, this is for everybody listening out on the network, but for you to lose coolant is something you always need to pay attention to, period. There could be a direct correlation to the white smoke. It's not that we chose a new pope. It's that you could be burning moisture and making the white smoke out the tailpipe. And so there could be a correlation. But you also could have just the fact that condensation does form inside of exhaust on a regular basis with humidity changes, temperature changes, and That's why there's drip holes. That's why you'll see it dripping out of exhaust sometimes. So it could be unrelated, but we need to talk about this.
There have been so many changes in weather patterns across the country that in the last 3 to 4 months, I've had more calls and emails about this very subject, about smoke from the exhaust that has turned out to be condensation. And it has to do with air pressure, humidity, temperature, all that leads up to water building up in the exhaust. And what happens is that when it condensates, they have drain holes drilled into those mufflers and in the resonators, and they will drip on the ground. So people see a new drip and they don't know what it is, or some smoke coming out. But of course, if you've got a combination of a coolant loss with that, you really need to look. But your coolant may be burning up, and you may not be seeing smoke
exactly.
from the coolant.
Russ, how much coolant really would you have to be losing to produce white smoke? It would be
probably, if let's say you drove
not that there's an exact answer, but you'd have to be losing a fair amount.
In a week where you took, let's say every week you drive 200 miles, you would probably be losing a half gallon or more.
So how much coolant are you losing, Jake?
Well, I didn't notice that we just came back from the Black Hills. It never used any coolant, but it's always kind of had that condensation when I started. So I was pulling razors back from the Black Hills, and then I went to change oil when we got back, and I seen it was pretty low. So I did a pressure test on it, and I only did it for about a half hour, but it held pressure or vacuum. I mean, I did a vacuum test.
Well, with an Expedition, if it was a little low, it may be that it's leaking just during the winter in the cold months. And what happens on those is they use an O-ring on the radiator hoses and on the heater hoses. Instead of just the old traditional rubber hose with a big steel clamp or even a spring clamp, they put an O-ring on there, and it's a quick connector. They click and snap on. And those O-rings are famous for drying out and shrinking a little bit, and they only leak in the winter. I had one in our shop 2 days ago that he said it leaks in the winter, and they can't ever find it because they check it when the vehicle's warm. It's got to sit overnight, cold, then it loses a little bit on the ground, then it gets it in the shop, and it dries up. So I said, you bring it in the winter, you park it, let it sit overnight or on the weekend. We will go out there in the freezing cold with our coats on and hats and gloves and gear.
Your mittens with your strings in the sleeves.
And we will take the cap off and we will put a pressure test on it, but we won't pressurize it completely. We'll only give it about 1 pound, just enough to push it out, because too much and it'll seal up. So just a little bit, and then we'll get our flashlight and start looking for that leak. We might even have to put some dye in it, let it run a little bit, let it sit overnight, and then use our UV light like we're checking for an air conditioner or an oil leak, and see where the residue is. And if we see a little bit by a clamp, 100% guarantee it's leaking there, or that quick connector, not a clamp. And then
Jake, I'm going to make one more run at this with you just to make sure. You started off your call saying you were losing coolant. Now, after what we've just talked about and what you've said, your coolant loss, are you actively adding coolant, or you just noticed that you were low in the reservoir and kind of correlated that with the smoke? Let's get back to this so we can solve this for you for sure.
Yeah, I had to add a gallon, and I checked those O-ring style fittings. I've seen that there's a Y on it. You can about an $80 part for the whole hose. I was thinking about starting there, and my reservoir cap looked a little warped, so I don't know if maybe it's coming out of the reservoir. I can never see it leak. I can never catch it.
Well, here's the next step.
I looked over the radiator. It looked good.
Next step is going to be an exhaust gas test just to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a chemical test coming out of the coolant. They sell them. We've got it at the shop. They're around. You're basically drawing coolant into a reservoir and testing it with chemicals to see if it interacts to produce traces of hydrocarbons. If you've got that, you might have an internal problem in the engine. It sounds like you might have a combination of little leaks that maybe got it down where you added that, but you aren't actively adding it, correct? I want to ask that question again.
Well, I added a gallon, and it's been fine, but it looked a little low this morning. After it sat all night, it looked a little low again.
Okay, so you're going
to have a new problem in the past few days.
Okay, you're going to want to rule out any external leaks that you can see from the things that we've talked about. But if not, do that exhaust gas check. And if you happen to find that you have some exhaust gases getting into that coolant, very expensive to tear that engine apart. It's an EcoBoost, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yes.
expensive to tear that engine apart and dig into it. It would be a great opportunity for our partner K-Seal Ultimate. We talk about it all the time. Doesn't affect anything. I would try that, but that's great to use. We'd recommend it for a lot of situations, but I would definitely want to make sure you're ruling out all those external leaks too first.
Okay. I will try K-Seal. I've heard of that. So sounds
All right,
good,
Jake.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Yep. But
All right, we're going to jump right over to Gary in Kansas with a Beetle. Hello, Gary.
Hello.
Tell us
My
about it.
situation is I bought a 2012 Volkswagen Beetle at an auction. They drove it to the auction site, and then it wouldn't start, so I towed it home. We started doing a lot of checking on it and finally decided that the ECU, the computer, was an issue. So we located another used one, stuck it in the car, and the car started up, sounded good for about 5 seconds, and shut off. And we determined that the codes or something were messed up. We even got the key for the second ECU, and that didn't change anything. And we can't figure out what to do next.
Well, the ECU system in those cars, the way they run the security, is more than just the engine computer. It's the engine computer, the body control module. Basically, it's they call them different names in the Volkswagen. It slips my mind right off, but we've done this with Mercedes.
I know in Mercedes they called it a gateway module. Was part of it.
It's crazy. What you might do, you're gonna have to find a locksmith that does this, that is specialized in replacing lost keys, and you might try to put the factory computer back in and see with the factory key and the factory computer if they can reprogram that, because it may have lost its security for some reason or another, or the key fob may have just gone bad where they can do that. And then those modules would talk to each other again, and maybe, let's just say it just had a bad key. So they'll get you a key and get it going. That would be the easiest thing.
Yeah, I was going to recommend the same thing. Go back to original. Start
because if you try to change a computer in one of these cars,
right,
it typically is one where you have to buy a brand new Volkswagen OEM computer from the dealership, have them install it, and have them code it with their machine to that car to match the other computers. Putting a used module in with no other modules replaced, I don't believe will work, because we have done that ourselves. We ended up putting in the same system with the Bosch Siemens controllers, we ended up putting 4 modules in a Mercedes, which is almost identical the way it's set up, in order to make this work, because we put the 4 used modules in that all matched each other and then did some programming with the key, but we got it to work that way. But we could not do it with one single module. Volkswagen's kind of tricky on its own, but they're very strong. It's very rare that you have a security issue with a computer failing in one of those. We have never had to replace a computer in a Beetle in our shop for that. I've replaced the transmission computers. They fail fairly often in those. They're up in the top of the dash, but not the engine computer. So I would try, like in our area, we've got a locksmith that he kind of takes it on himself as a challenge to play with this kind of stuff and get security to work. But in most cases, he will fix the original by something external, a key or something like that is going on, but not the computer. So I'm kind of leaning that direction.
We wondered, the original thing was that it was kicking so many codes that we determined that we thought that it was the computer that was causing the issue. And like you said, you may be right. It might be that the computer wasn't necessarily bad; it just wasn't getting the code.
Yep, it might have just been by jump starting it and things like that when they take them to the auction. Sometimes that happens, and we'll find that we can disconnect the battery for a few minutes, fully charge it, hook it back up, clear the codes, and then start over again. So I'd give that a shot, and that's going to be your best get.
Hey, listen, I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thanks,
very
Gary.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Boy, Shannon, that scares me when somebody talks security in a Beetle or an Audi or a Mercedes, because they can get goofy like that. But again, like we said, it's really rare. We don't see it that often, thankfully, because they're and I think
our sales on those ECMs, when we look at the use perspective, are very low.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because, well, one, it's a challenge to get them going, but 2, because they're strong and they just don't fail that that often. Like I said, we've never had one just fail because of that. So Under the Hood Show will be right back. We're going to take a break. Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturtevant's.
Some are born with a silver spoon in their mouth. For these guys, it was a torque wrench and a multimeter. This is Under the Hood.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom, and we are going to take your calls. We're going to jump right back into the phones again, and we're going to talk to Doug in Colorado with a 96 Ford Explorer. Doug, you're under the hood.
Yeah, so when you engage the four-wheel,
Yeah.
it's on the dash. It's just a switch, and it just grinds it's like it's not engaging. You can't get it to go into four-wheel, and then it's kind of hard if you flip the switch back to off. Then it takes a little while for it to stop grinding.
Ooh.
So it is it's attempting to the servo is attempting to do something.
I need more. I need more. So if you're stopped and you're not rolling anywhere, you've got it. You got your foot on the brake. It's in drive. You flip it from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive high, and it makes noise just sitting there, not moving when you put it into four-wheel drive.
No. Only when you just you flip the switch. If you're stopped and you start moving forward after you flip the switch, then it starts grinding.
Oh my!
Is the grinding coming from right below you, or is it sound like it's coming from the front end?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the front end and below me, kind of like.
If you stop, does it stop grinding?
No.
Ooh.
Oh, let's see.
When the vehicle stops rolling.
Yeah, it stops. Yeah, but when you're moving, it grinds.
Well, that tells me that the problem is somewhere in either in the transfer case chain or forward of that, the front differential or the front drive shaft. You could have a drive shaft that's coming apart. You could have a chain that's coming apart in the transfer case because it's loose. Or you could have something going on in the front differential because when you put that into two-wheel drive, it's going to unlock the front axle. The axles aren't going to turn, and the drive shaft isn't going to turn in the front. So our first check on this, our first check is we're going to get it in the air. We're going to pull the drain plug on the transfer case because at this age, it probably needs changing anyways, but we're going to see if there's metal. If there's metal in that case, just start there, put a case in it. You can get a certified used case from Cardash Part for
not very expensive.
Yeah, they're peanuts. They're a pretty decent price on that.
Depending which model is, something from $100 to $600.
Yeah, they're very affordable. But my guess is you may find metal in it. If you don't, and it's still nice and clean, get it changed. Twist the front drive shaft, shake it around, see if it's loose, if you've got any loose joints on it, and also the CV axles in the front. See if they're loose on that. But I think you're physically going to see something, either something in the transfer case oil or something in the front differential oil is going to lead you to see that there is a problem with one.
Well,
of the
yeah, because
units.
you got that 96 is an independent front suspension, so the front axle shafts themselves are turning all the time. It's just whether or not that inside that transfer case, if it's going to engage that the front drive shaft to be able to start turning. And so there's, the servos is working, or else it wouldn't be changing things. So it's when it engages what is not keeping, because that's typically a symptom we'll hear from people that don't quite understand the shift when they're trying to do the low range.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not going into neutral and getting it stopped all the way, and they'll get all kinds of noises, and they're like, "Oh, what did I do?"
But no noise till it rolls tells me it's a rotating component. And we have seen our biggest failure on these is the transfer case.
Yeah.
But
it's not very often.
No, very rarely. But when it happens, it's usually like this. It's all of a sudden there's a noise when it moves. We pull the plug out and go, "Ooh, yeah, that doesn't look good." And we put another case in it, and it's back on the road.
And we're assuming you've already been underneath there and giving a physical inspection to see if there's any messed up drive shafts or what have you, correct?
Yeah, I'm not a mechanic, but I just I didn't see nothing. You know, it works good just in two wheel, no problem. When you flip it in, then that's what you get.
Yeah.
My cousin thought it was a solenoid down on the front range. He was a wrench head for years, and he had a problem with his around that model, and he thought it was an electrical solenoid, but I don't know if they were exact same models at the time. I don't know.
The only other thing that could be an issue would be as if you had a major tire size difference where your tires were completely worn out on either the front or the rear, and the other ones were like brand new, and it was such a difference.
Are good.
They're good?
Yeah, the tires are in good shape. Yeah.
Then that's not a problem.
And that would have been an extreme example.
Oh yeah, we've had people where you get those mud tires and one of them's half-inch thicker than the other, and there's such a difference that they'll give a grinding, but it's more of a
slipping.
popping. Yeah, it's like a tunk 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 down the road, not necessarily a grind. So
yeah.
Well, the good thing is the good thing is it's repeatable, and so you get it to somebody that's going to know a little more of that system. They're going to be able to pinpoint it pretty quick. And the other good thing is there's lots of parts around.
Yeah,
good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Take care, Doug. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to jump right back in, and we're going to talk to Mark in North Dakota with a 15 Silverado.
Good morning, guys.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, I got a quick question for you on my Silverado, and this isn't really so much mechanical. It's more I'm hoping you can just shed some light on my issues.
Sure.
I changed the antifreeze. It was 110,000 miles, and I changed the antifreeze. But, of course, there's no radiator cap. There's no radiator drain. So you put a big sheet of plastic under there, and you kind of hope you can head it toward the drain pan.
Sure.
In doing so, I bought a new thermostat. That comes with the rubber gasket around the thermostat.
Right.
I put that in. I put the antifreeze back in, and that's a pretty time-consuming process to get enough antifreeze back in that. But anyway, how can the system work with the thermostat in the lower radiator hose?
Well, they have what they call reverse cooling in vehicles. They have one that runs one direction traditionally and one that runs the other direction. So what you need to do for a thermostat to work is the spring, or the heat motor they call it. Our partners over at Motorrad, when they talk in terms of thermostats, they always give us the correct terminology, which is fun, and it's also important to know sometimes when we're doing some diagnosis. But that spring part is called a heat motor. That has to be in contact with the hot part of the coolant in the engine. So if you've got coolant coming out of the bottom and flowing up in the radiator and out back into the top of the motor, that's a reverse cooling, which in my mind, we've always had it get hot, come out of the top of the engine, and then flow downwards through the radiator. But it makes more sense to me, since heat rises, to put the hot coolant into the bottom, which they found out later it works better that way. Coolant goes in the bottom hot, and as it goes to the top and the fan's moving and the air's moving down the road, it cools it, and then it dumps it back in the top of the engine, and it's just worked out better. So that is how that system, that's how that system works. And they still do them both directions. Some come out the top, some come out the bottom, some come out one side and go back in the other side, depending on what kind of engine you have. But that's perfectly normal for yours. And for us, we use a vacuum system, which vacuums all the air out of the system. And then we open a valve and it sucks the coolant back in. So it replaces all the air, which is under a vacuum, with coolant, and it fills every cubic inch of that engine, instead of having that difficult time that you're having trying to fill it up with coolant.
So if I do it the way I did it now, and because my thermostat, when I thinking it had a new rubber gasket, I of course didn't put any sealant compound on that at all, and then it leaked, so I had to go through the whole process again. Am I okay by running the engine a little bit, adding whatever water goes down in the bottle, and then topping it off about 4 times, and now it doesn't seem to be going down at all, and I've driven it numerous trips?
Yeah, you just want to make sure that when you got any vehicle, see if there's a special coolant fill procedure. And it'll typically tell you on the sticker under the hood, it'll say this vehicle requires a special coolant fill. If not, look in the owner's manual or find out, because some of them have a little valve you open, which lets air out as you're filling it up in order to burp that air out of the system and fill everything with coolant. That truck is designed so that you should be able to just pour it in. It will fill it once you start it, because there's no cap on the radiator. It's circulating, and it has an air release at the top of it that goes into that coolant reservoir where the cap actually is that you're filling. That's where, so it's bleeding the system, self-bleeding on its own. So if you've driven it, it's going to be, good and clear now. So you should be fine.
Sure. I warmed it up about 4 times just till I got the hoses warm. Then I let it cool off, everything settled, and the next morning I'd put in a little more antifreeze and top the bottle off. And after, I think it was this time 4 times, then it didn't take any more antifreeze, and now I've driven it on a couple 30-mile trips.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I feel I'm okay. Well, you really did explain to me. I didn't realize that they would go counter flow on every other engine I have. Hot water comes out the top.
Yeah, they do that on a bunch of them now.
But I really appreciate that. Well, with my 2017 Impala with the 3.6 liter, would that be counterflow also?
I believe that one is too. I believe the thermostat's down low on that one. You'd have to, well, it's 3.5. No, 3.5. I think that one's right on the top. Yeah, no, I think that comes out the top. Yeah, 3.6, all the 3.6, 3.5, all those come out the top, I believe. Yes, they do. They do.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
because my pickups aren't being worked real, and I go to 110,000 before I change the antifreeze.
That's about.
I did any damage?
No. That's about right.
Definitely over 5 years.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You'll be fine. There's some people that will actually just test the antifreeze with litmus strips and litmus test and just look for sediment, and if they don't show it gaining metals or acidity or any problems, they'll run it longer than that sometimes.
Sure. Thanks for the call.
Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate your help. You guys have a wonderful show.
Thank you. Take care. All right. Hey, it's time to give away a hoodie. We're going to give away a hoodie from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute and, of course, our good partners and friends at BerkeleyOneClassics.com, celebrating 50 years. And we're giving away to David Lynch. Congratulations from all of us here. Universal Technical Institute. I've got a grandson that's thinking he might want to become a mechanic. Yeah, he's thinking about coming down here and spending a couple of weeks with me and checking out the shop and seeing if maybe that's what he wants to do. He's quite the kid. Pretty proud of him. He's not only a really good mechanic, has been for a number of years now, but he excels at something I don't, and that's sports. He's right now he's currently number 2 in the state records for long jump in the state he's in, and it's just amazing watching them do that on YouTube. But
oh wow, that's got to be is it the triple jump or the straight long jump?
It's the straight long jump.
So
where
like 20-some feet, 18 feet.
Oh, it's way longer than that. It's like what they're doing in high school now is more than what they were doing like in the Olympics 30 years ago when I was a kid.
I remember watching that record get broke at the Olympics, and it was just like, wow. And would they go like 27 foot, back in the day?
I have to show you a video.
Yeah, I want to see that. I love that kind of stuff.
They've just evolved the whole thing, and I don't know. It's crazy watching them do it. But, Universal Technical Institute could be a place to go. Might be some place he's going to check out, because they will be able to help you get trained to become the best mechanic you can be, not just a mechanic.
Well, if he wants to be the best long jumper, he trains. If he wants to be the best technician, you have to train.
Yeah, I wish I was that good back then. I mean, he's not only good in that, but football and soccer.
That's fun.
Everything else too. So, definitely that didn't come from Grandpa. So that's the way it goes. All right, it is that time again. What time is it? No, it's not time to end the show. It is time for a quick break. We're going to take a break. You can call us in between time, 866-594-4150, and get on Under the Hood. Talk to producer Doug there in the booth. He'll help you out. The Under the Hood show is brought to you by Sturdivant's. Welcome back to the Under the Hood show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
We're just going to keep this thing rolling here, and we're going to jump right back into the phones, and we're going to talk to Paul in Kansas with an 11 Mazda CX-7. Hello, Paul. You're under the hood.
Hello. How you doing today?
Wonderful, wonderful. What's up with your car, though? I don't sound like it's not doing as good as we are.
Nothing too serious, but I bought this thing about 5 years ago. And within the first year, my driver's side headlight went out. And so I went online and bought a 2-pack of bulbs. Figured, why not have a spare just in case the other one goes out? Well, about a year later, another one did go out, but it was the driver's side one again. So I went ahead and popped in that other bulb. And then about 6 months ago, the driver's side bulb went out again. So that's 3 times in 5 years, and all 3 times it was the driver's side bulb.
If the bulbs...
Right now, Chris is listening saying, I've had this happen before with a Toyota.
and one bulb going out can happen on many cars. And we like to replace them in pairs, because if you do just one, the other one is typically time-based, but they'll last even with the better, if the factory has put some little higher powered ones in to try to conquer a lighting issue they've had where customers have had a lot of complaints after a car is a couple model years old. They may put in a little brighter bulb to make them pass their muster for what they want for brightness. And then they typically will burn out a little quicker because they're a hotter bulb. But also, you've got to make sure there's no moisture getting in there, because if you've got a lens where the housing is getting moisture in there, it will burn out quicker. Or if you get any fingerprints on a bulb, it will cause it to burn out quicker. The oils on your fingers will cause that. So you want to put some gloves on or use a rag, a dry rag.
I'll be Chris right now. Is that really that big of a deal?
It's a huge deal. Right. Yeah, you want to keep the bulb completely clean.
I have heard that before, so I did make sure to use rubber gloves when installing the bulbs.
Perfect, and make sure they're not anything with a glove that's coated with anything, just a plain old latex, no powder, nothing, no oils on it, because that'll cause... I've seen people use a shop rag to put them in, and typically our shop rags are like, when they're clean, they've got a little oil base to them, certain ones, so we try to put them in like that, and then we don't have a lot of issues with them. But the other thing that can cause the problems are if the socket for the bulb shows any burn signs around the connector, where there's some melting going on from heat, that will cause a resistance issue and can cause voltage spikes and cause the bulbs to go out prematurely as well. So you want to make sure those connectors are fixed. And if they need to be replaced, replace them.
Okay.
So, with that said, make sure you've got good connectors. Don't touch the bulbs. And then also pick a good quality of bulb. If you go for a brighter bulb, a performance bulb, be aware that those are typically 1 to 2 years is what they'll last. Like if you get a high performance, there's people like Sylvania sell the silver stars, and Philips makes a high powered, and I think GE makes one. And
I believe it actually was the Sylvania that I purchased this last time.
And if you get a high powered one, I find on my own cars with those, I'm replacing bulbs a little over every 12 months if it's a car that's driven every day. I had one where I'd drive it to work in the winter. The lights were on coming to work and going home every day. And then through the summer, and about every 12 months, I was putting bulbs in it. So I just kept the ones I took out. When one would go out, I'd put the pair of them in, and then I'd keep the other one that worked in the glove box. So if I noticed it was out, I could swap it out pretty quick on mine. And then it was told me that when I get to work tomorrow, buy a pair and install them, and then save one of the good ones, whichever one was left.
Do you remember on Chris's the Toyota recall? Yeah. What was the solution that they had for that?
We replaced the bulbs and the sockets.
Oh, is that what it ended up being?
Yep. And in some cases, it was bulb sockets, and then the whole headlight assembly, like in the Acadia, where they would melt.
Yeah.
They had issues with that. They would get so hot they would melt the housing.
That was with an HID type arrangement. And this is more of a typical fluorescent.
Yep.
type bulb, right?
But this 11 CX-7,
Or
we
halogen,
have
excuse me. I said
a
fluorescent.
customer with one of these, and we use the stock bulbs, but we've replaced the bulbs twice in her car. She drives it every day, back and forth, 50 miles, 60 mile round trip every day. But her bulbs are, the first one was out when she bought it 3 years ago. Then we did one set, and we did one bulb because she was in a hurry, and we only had one. And then we did a pair of them again. So
would there be less? Okay, let's just back this up a little bit. Maybe this vehicle's got some inherent vibration issue or something that shakes them too much or whatever. Would there be a better opportunity for less failures if he went to an LED equivalent bulb?
Yeah, LEDs typically last longer. So if this car is capable of using an LED bulb in it, if it's got a projector beam type bulb, I think this one does have projector beams in it, doesn't it?
I'm really not sure.
You look at it, got a round, looks like a old video projector from high school.
Correct.
Yeah, then you can get an LED bulb for it and still have it legal because it's got a cutoff in it. So if you find an LED equivalent for that, you should be able to put that in and get a better looking beam that's a whiter light, but also have it last longer.
Go to your local auto parts store and they can tell you, okay, I have this make model. They usually have a little catalog right there in the aisle. And a lot of times, I've seen some that have a little kiosk you can push, but they'll tell you what the equivalency bulb would be available in an LED replacement. And they're much more rugged than a filament bulb. Technology's evolved, but we also see people get the wrong LED bulb in, and then they got a resistance difference, and they don't work the same. They have challenges with that, or it doesn't. The pattern doesn't work very well. But like Russ said, with that projector beam headlight, where there's as he called it, like a cutoff, like a hood over the bulb in a sense, you can at that point consider that as an option. So inspect that socket real close. Maybe a little dielectric grease in the socket there, just to help if there's moisture getting in there or something. I doubt it, but those are the types of things.
I was just curious that because the passenger side bulb is still the same bulb from when I bought the car 5 years ago.
Yeah,
but the driver's is the one.
Then something's going on with either the harness connector or some moisture getting in, but the LED wouldn't be affected by that, so it should be good. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, Paul.
Well, that definitely gives me a direction to follow.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the help, guys.
See ya. All right. It's coming to be that time. It's
getting right there.
End of hour one. One more episode in the can, so to speak.
And if you're wanting more, there will be more. Hour two will be coming up pretty soon here, too.
You can always find us on podcasts if you want to listen to any of our past episodes or watch us on YouTube. We'd appreciate that. Make sure you like and subscribe there if you want. But for now, we're off, and we will be right back in a second with hour two of Under the Hood, 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
You can call us at 866-594-4150 and get under the hood with us today, and we'll do our best to help you save some money on car repairs because they are not getting any cheaper, just like the price of cars. They've seemed to level off a little bit. I've been watching them real close
Starting
lately.
to see rebates and special incentives. And
certain cars that are used have actually come down quite a bit, but most of them have held their own or gone up and are still going up. And we're looking at cars, the ones that are in that hold up better are holding their value. But cars that, like take a Ram truck, for instance, a Ram truck, like a 10 to 14, 08 to 14 in there, they have had a number of engine problems. So with that, their value hasn't held as strong as some of the Silverados and some of the Fords, even with Fords and their engine problems. And I don't know why yet, but if you're buying one with a remanufactured engine in it that's been updated, it still should be the same value, but their value has been a little less. And same way with some cars, you'll get cars like the Equinox holding their value like crazy, but some of the Traverse and things like that, you'll see they've been falling down in price while an Acadia has been holding its value, even though it's the same drivetrain power plant. I don't know what they're thinking, why they're doing that, but overall, yeah, the prices are.
I just sold a Toyota Camry. You know the car. You guys work on it?
Oh, yeah.
I had 7 people that wanted to buy it at once when I put it up for sale.
Yeah, what year was that, a 14?
09.
09, and
100,000 miles.
100,000 miles, and what was that, a $11,000, $12,000?
No, $7,500.
$7,500, so
Yep.
So still fairly affordable.
Yep, nice car. Had a salvage title, but we had seven people that would have bought it all at the same time.
Yeah, so with a salvage title and a Camry, not a high, highest end by any means.
No, it was an LE 4-cylinder,
Yeah.
nice car.
Yeah, so if you're looking for basic transportation, like when we were in high school, basic transportation like that was $1,500.
Yeah.
Now that basic transportation is a 10-year-old car. So we were looking at a 1975, 74 or 75 car that was 10 years old with probably 60,000 on it, which was a lot of miles.
You put that in that perspective, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, if we're in high school, a 75 Firebird or Camaro with 60,000 miles was like, oh, that's worn out. 10 years old. I'm going to pay $800 for that, and it's going to be a nice car. So
I think mine was a 78 or 79. I have to see what year that was. Maybe in 76, Datsun pickup.
There you go. Or the Datsun B10. We're going to jump back onto the phones, and we're going to talk with Jim with an 03 Corolla. You're under the hood, Jim.
Okay, great. Good to speak with both of you.
Well, thank you.
So the fuel line rusted out where the nylon plastic socket joint joins with the metal.
Yep,
and I'm wondering.
Jim called in last time, and I didn't have the
exact I don't want to give it to you.
The exact terminology because I knew Russ would be more on top of this, and I think we said that the auto parts store should be able to give you a good clue on this.
Right, and they should.
What do you guys do all the time on this, Russ? Because this is something that we have happen with rust in our area all the time.
We call the auto parts store now. we will call them to order more parts.
Hey, just a second. Finish your question in case we just assume something that is not even what you're going to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I did, like you said, I called around, and they're suggesting a compression fit, a compression fitting, and use that to join those two parts together. And before I get in this, because I'm a backyard kind of mechanic, before I get involved, I wanted to check with you guys.
Yes. So compression fittings in cars for brakes, definitely not, because they're 5,000 to 10,000 pounds. I mean, you got a lot of pounds of pressure depending on the type of system you have. You can't do it. It's not legal to use. With fuel lines, they're basically pressed together. If you look at where the metal line joins the plastic line up by the engine, it is literally just crammed on there. They have taken that plastic hose with a special tool, and they have a barbed fitting on the metal, and then they just push the plastic hose right over the top of it, and it's just a press fit. We, in our shop, have a tool that will flare a cut metal line, and then it will grab a hold of the plastic and hold the outside of it so it doesn't crumble and smash, because you can bend that line with your fingers. How do you think you're going to shove it on with 400 pounds of pressure or so? So it holds the outside of it stiff while it pushes it over, but it leaves just enough room for it to expand over it. And it's put together. Our other choice is that same kit has compression fittings. We have to cut the line and make sure that there's no rust on the outside of it. We have to be able to sand it smooth with some steel wool until it's shiny, so we know there's no pitting in it. And then we put the compression fitting on it, which allows us to bolt up hose or whatever we need typically to make that work. And the auto parts store carries everything for that kit we may need in stock. It's something that we know we can rely on to be there for us. So I stock just what I need to do the ones I think I need to do. And then if something odd comes in like this, then I could get the piece I need. But yes, we will use a compression fitting for that. And you should be able to go see them and get all the parts you need to make yours work. But if there's anything rusted, don't ever try to crimp onto, with a compression fitting onto a rusted line or something that you can't use steel wool to clean up and make shiny and new again, because it will fail. And you don't want any failures with fuel lines.
Right. Well, I just wanted to make sure before I jumped into this, and I really appreciate the insight from both of you.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling us. That's a great question that a lot of people have to deal with rusty fuel lines and rusty brake lines. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Thanks, Jim.
Uh-huh. Bye.
Take care. Yeah, we see so many rusted lines, Shannon. It's usually brakes, but we do get rusted fuel lines now and then. And now our partner, Dorman Products, is selling not only the brake line kits, but fuel line kits in a lot of cases as well, where you can get the line like on a Chevy truck, everything from the tank all the way up to the engine. You just replace the whole kit.
Because they're, again, doing their surveys with the repair shops. They find out, here's a common thing. What's your common problems that are causing problems in the rust belt? And, we're in a pretty bad spot. You go further to the east and further to the northeast, you get into areas that they really have even worse problems than us, and these solutions are needed.
Yeah, for sure. This is the End of the Hood Show, 866-594-4150. Give us a call, and you'll get on Under the Hood with Shannon and Russ today. Chris will be back next week, we hope. The End of the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Never, ever use your tongue to see if your car battery is good. Seriously, we mean it. This is Under the Hood.
Welcome back to the End of the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans, along with Shannon Nordstrom in the building.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
So I'm just gonna go right back to this phone call because it's just been staring at me for a few minutes here, and I appreciate Jennifer waiting on hold. So,
kind of curious what kind of car this is.
Yeah, so it's SHR. That's a super hot rod. Jennifer, what kind of car is it?
It's a Toyota CHR 22.
Oh, okay, now that makes more sense. We've got SHR. Doug, he's like, I want a super hot rod, is what Doug says. So, what's wrong with the car?
Okay, so I'm out traveling and I'm camping, and I use the power outlet with a power inverter. Power inverter is a 500 watt. I've been using it. It hasn't been a problem. The problem is that I plugged in an electric kettle to it, which requires 700 watts, and it blew the fuse. So
you should see Russ's head nodding here.
YouTube.
You were watching on YouTube. You were saying 7. He was going shaking his head back and forth as you were saying kettle.
Well, I need my tea in the morning, and
Okay, keep going here. I had to
I'm
interrupt
at a
because
10.
Russ's body language was entertaining me.
Well, I replaced a fuse, but it's still not working. The power outlet thing.
Well, one, let's hope that the fuse you replaced is the wrong fuse, that it's for a different circuit, and that's not the problem. But was the fuse that you pulled out, could you see that it was definitely blown, or was it questionable?
It was.
Oh, it was blown.
It was blown, and it was the right one because, I mean, according to the diagram on the cover.
Because sometimes they're hard to tell if they're blown, and sometimes they're
very obvious.
Yeah, and and there's more than one, because sometimes they have different labels. So it might be that you've got two. There might be two accessory circuits in this car, which would be great, and that maybe both of them are blown now. You've got one that you put the fuse in that you're not using. Who knows where that one's at? And then you've got another one that's still blown, or there's just two fuses in that circuit.
Can I jump in here, Russ, and ask? What model did you say this was?
It's a CHR.
A CHR. Does it have a factory inverter where you plug things in, or is this something that you've added yourself as a plug into the accessory?
Myself.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up.
Not factory.
Yeah, so you may have two fuses. There may be a main fuse and then the switch fuse for that, but do some more.
Would they be on the same fuse panel?
No, they may be on two different ones. One may be under the hood. So you want to do some digging into that and find out where that's at. I mean, in a lot of cases, we'll also go to YouTube on that, because they'll have some. I had this problem with my cigarette lighter, and there turned out to be two fuses. A lot of those circuits, we've seen that, but also we've seen them run through. So that's your fuse for it, but they run through a module in order to power that, and that can cause a problem. You don't want that. So
I'm going to ask one more question here. I'm sorry. I'm thinking as Russ is talking here, and I don't have the specs like he does, but are you trying to run that same inverter, or have you tried another accessory in there?
I've tried another accessory.
Okay, so you know it's dead, and it's not just. I'm just trying to figure out everything here.
Yep.
Sorry.
So, do you use that socket for anything else other than the kettle situation? Okay, so
well, I mean, for charging things,
phones.
But
here's what I would do. I would get the proper inverter that you need to run what you want. If you're camping a lot and you use this on the road and you'd like to use something heavier, maybe get a 1,000-watt inverter if you've got a 700-watt heater. And get one of the.
Then those have to be plugged into the battery.
Yeah, so I would do that. I would get it run to the battery. There are places through the firewall which you can run a power and ground that's fused at the battery on these to protect the cables, and you can run it through. We've done those on our own company trucks for this very reason, because it can not only blow the fuse but melt some wiring or cause modules to fail when they're overloaded. They're very particular about that. They usually even have a label on the front that says how many watts can be drawn. They're just, and the foreign cars are well, the American cars are that way now too, but we would suggest that bigger inverter. It would cost a little bit to run those wires through there, but it's better than having this problem in the future. But if you need to charge something else as well, a lot of the inverters, when you pick one, even if you're picking one up like at a truck stop or something on the shelf of many cool things, I like to always stop at those like a flying J. Like, look at all the toys.
I always walk through that aisle.
They'll have some with a USB plug on them and a cigarette lighter type for a phone or whatever for charging. They'll have those on the inverter. So if you got an inverter in there, you've also got these extra outlets. Just make sure you don't leave the thing running too long and run your battery dead if you're camping.
Russ, what's your hunch on what happened here?
I think it's probably just there's probably two fuses in this circuit. It probably has a main fuse that powers, let's say, two separate accessory circuits, and then each separate accessory circuit has its own fuse as well. So there's probably two fuses blown in that, and it probably just snapped them at the same time. I've seen that in cars where a customer is common. Shan, they'll come in and say, "Hey, my fuse, I replaced it and fuse is blown, and it still doesn't work." And I look at my wiring diagram, which shows the whole power supply, and it starts the battery and goes down. I said, there's 2 fuses there. Let's check the other one. And I checked the other one and it's blown. Or they'll say, well, I checked the one that says it goes to this accessory light or whatever, and it wasn't blown, but it still doesn't work. And then I find the second one in the line.
And if we had a trivia contest amongst 14 to 21-year-old people, how many of them would be able to point at what a cigarette lighter is?
That's true. I could.
Well, thank you.
I can also identify a VHS tape.
Hey, thank you very much for calling.
Take care.
I appreciate it. You guys have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, we were out on a trip. Jake and the guys at the shop and the kids were all with us, and we were out in Rapid City on Memorial Day, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And we were in a little store, knick-knack store on the side of the road, little cabin. And I said, hey, you know what this is? And they went, duh, it's a phone. And I said, how do you call on it? Well, you pick it up and dial the number. I said, okay, there you go. You just said it. Show me. And they were like, huh? Because it was a rotary dial phone. We still say dial, which we really should say push the number. Roll up windows in a car. There's very few that
I
still
got a
have
video
them.
back on my Facebook page of putting my then probably 10-year-old daughter in a 79 Trans Am with manual windows and asking her to roll the window down.
Yeah.
Took her a little bit, and she eventually looked around and she got it, but it was not immediate.
And even some of our cars from the day had some weird ones, like some of the early 70s and late 60s that did some really funky things, like old Grand Prix and stuff with the weird door handles and windows and crazy stuff. They made it crazy.
Our inventory specialist, Chad, just had a car get dropped off here from his uncle, and it was a 32 Chrysler rumble seat.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And to start that, he had to tell the transport driver on the floor with the foot.
With the gas pedal.
Yep.
Yeah. You hold all the way down to start it, to crank it, and then you let it up.
I think this one had a separate button on the
Oh, did it have
floorboard,
the separate right in the middle?
I didn't do it, but I think it was a separate one.
Yeah, so some of them have a starter button. You step on it, and it actually made a contact with the solenoid and pushed it. Some cars actually just put a metal piece across the 2 posts. And then some cars had it was the Chrysler that had the gas pedal to start it. So you would pull the choke on the dash to choke it or not. And then to start it, you pushed it all the way down to the floor and it would crank the car. And as soon as it cranked, you'd let up. But those are engines that would crank and run so smooth and so nice and instantly just fire. You had to have that little dance of let's pull the choke out, let's not pull the choke out, all those different things. There's so many things that have changed over the years on cars, and it's been amazing.
Well, and then it also had, and Chad was looking, and I never went back down there and looked at it, but there was a speaker box kind of under the dash, like below the steering column. But then on the actual radio, it almost looked like it was a small round radio on the side of the steering column.
Yeah, the dial.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old AM transistor.
Yeah, it had 2 dials on it, and it was...
Some of them had tubes. I remember some of the old cars.
Pretty wild looking at it.
The tube radios, you turn them on, and you could always tell a tube radio because if you turned on the switch and you waited, like, remember 20 seconds, and you hear it...
Yep.
It would power
come
up
to life
slowly, and then it would, as you turned it, it was... They were neat. They would crackle. I know your dad's, he's got a 57 Chevy up there, and it's got that style radio, and you turn it on, and those are the ones, if you dropped them, they were broken because they had glass.
Isn't it ironic that the old ones, if you drop them, you'd break them? Now the new ones are so sensitive when they used to have the CD cartridges and stuff, and you could drop them and break them. It's just the same way with different technologies.
Yeah. We get a lot of components now that say right on them, if dropped, discard, throw away. Like all the screens for the Ford radios. A lot of them have accelerometers and stuff in them and things for GPS and compasses and things. And they say, if you drop this, throw it away. Don't put it in. And that's so hard for a place like us where we have to inventory this, store it on a shelf, and did it accidentally get dropped?
That's where we're getting to more items where they're just going right in boxes right away to try to protect them, just like the manufacturer has to do.
Yeah, because you just never know, exactly what's going to happen. So, yeah, you just gotta be careful with that stuff. If you're going to sell it like us, we want to protect our parts. It's what we do.
Yeah. Well, I wish I would have. Did you ever get a chance to see that car while it was sitting here?
No, I did not. Didn't you know it was here?
Oh, it was here for a couple days. I got a picture I'll show you on the break.
Cool. This is the Under the Hood Show. You can get on the phone by calling 866-594-4150 and talk to Shannon or myself, and we'll do our best to help you with anything that's under, in, on, around your hood. This is Under the Hood Show. Under the Hood is brought to you by Sturdivants.
More powerful than spilled milk in the backseat of a hot car. This is Under the Hood.
Welcome back to the End of the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom, and we're here to take your calls. Got plenty of time left in this hour. We can get you under the hood and get you fixed, save you some cash, all the above, none of the above, whatever you feel like it. We'll get you hooked up.
Or we'll just try to entertain you a little bit if we get a chance.
Well, there's always that too, because we're always saying something just completely crazy. So we're going to go right back to the phones and talk to Harold in Kentucky with a 16 Ford F-150. You're under the hood, Harold.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. I got a 2016 Ford F-150 XLT. It's a 2.7 EcoBoost. And my problem is my check engine light comes on, and I need to go back probably 6 months. So this started, and the diagnostic said cylinder 4 was misfiring. So I went and bought a coil pack and a new plug and put it in there just to see what. So it went away.
Okay.
So that kind of took care of it. Then it came back, and then it still came. The diagnostics would say misfiring. So then I like my stuff to run correctly. So I bought all new plugs, all new coil packs, put them on there. Went away again. Then it come back. So I then do a.
Uh-oh, I missed you.
I think we might have enough here to talk about it, though, Russ.
Uh-oh.
A 2.7 EcoBoost 16 F-150. Maybe he'll call back in and join us. But the repeated failure on a cylinder 4 misfire, replaced coil and plug, failure came back on cylinder 4 misfire, decided he likes to have things running right. He goes through and puts on all new plugs and coils. And I'm going to guess he is about to say he got a cylinder 4 misfire again.
Mm-hmm.
And in that scenario, somebody needs to check what's going on in cylinder 4.
Yeah. Compression. Coil, check the coil boot, make sure all that is good. If you've got a compression issue, you've got a valve issue or something like that. We've seen that with the Jeeps. And
I was just going to say my 3.6, we did a couple rounds of fouled plug, coil, same cylinder, and then finally found out there was a problem in that cylinder. When they physically did a leak down test on that cylinder, they found that there was a problem with the valve in the head, and they had to take it apart.
It'll cause a repeated failure. So when that happens, a lot of times the fix on that engine is going to be most shops are going to do a complete engine, because you never know what you're going to get into on those when you take them apart and see what you got going on.
Well, and the other thing, Russ, too, let's cover the whole subject. And if he goes back and listens to this for other listeners too, he also needs to be checking the fuel injector on that cylinder.
Yes,
to make sure that it's getting a good pattern, that it's getting a steady fuel flow, because there's other contributing factors that could be causing that. And then when it gets down to it, worst case scenario is inside the engine.
Right.
That's worst case scenario. But the external factors that could still be at play could be an injector connector, Chris always gets entertained when we say that, and so do I. An injector connector, and make sure and put on the protector too on top of it. But then you've got things in the computer system that could be affected. Don't see that as often, correct, Russ?
Right. It's usually, on one of these, most of the time it's going to be the problem is going to be with the compression or something like that. Do we have you back, Harold?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So we speculated about your call for a little while. So finish taking off where you said you had just replaced all plugs and injectors.
And it's doing it again, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I placed all the injectors and plugs, and then I had a friend of mine tell me about Lucas Oil and gas treatment, their products. So I started using that. Every time I fill up, I put 9 ounces. I think it's 3 ounces for every 10 gallons. So I've been using that, and it kind of goes away, but then it comes back. And then I bought one of those, I don't know what you call it. You put it in the slot underneath the dash, and it turns the codes off.
Sure. Scan tool.
I'll reset it periodically. It'll go away, then it'll come back.
Okay.
So,
did you say you replaced all the plugs and injectors, or did I talk you into that by saying injector?
No, not injectors, coil packs.
Okay.
Coil packs.
I talked you into saying injector based on what I said, so I was going to pull that back.
With what you have, you've got 3 choices. They can do a compression and leak down test, and if they find out that the compression's a little low or it's leaking down past a valve on that cylinder on that 4, they can either pull the heads and they can put remanufactured heads on it or rebuild those, which is not cheap on this engine at all, or they can put a remanufactured engine in it or a good certified used engine in it.
He does not like the way you're talking like right now,
Yep.
Russ.
Or your last option is to just drive the darn thing until it blows up.
And we're assuming by what you've done already that problem is probably within that cylinder.
And it may, you may put 50 plugs in this thing over the next 30, 40,000 miles and still drive it. When I say blow up, I don't think it's going to explode and leave you stranded. I think it's just going to be 100% dead on that cylinder.
Our hunch is there's something wrong inside that cylinder.
Yeah. It's if you've already done the outside stuff, more than likely you've got. Now you need to verify it though, because if you have a bad computer that's causing this, you want to fix that so you don't ruin the engine.
Correct.
But if you find out it truly does have lower compression in that one cylinder, find out where it is. Is it going past the piston rings into the block, into the crankcase, or is it going past an intake valve or an exhaust valve? When I'm working on an engine and an extended warranty company says, "What is wrong with this engine?" Well, it misses.
They
we
won't
don't
take
care
that.
why it misses.
They don't accept that.
We don't know why. Well, it's got low compression. Nope. We don't. Nope. Got to give us an answer. It has 20% leakage past the intake valve on the number 4 cylinder. There's a problem with that valve. Okay, that's exactly what we needed to know. Now we can proceed. They won't just let me guess.
And that maddens people.
Yeah. And if you've got the right info, it's.
How many miles are on this truck?
191,000 right now.
191,000. That style engine, it's very possible it's got a burnt valve on it, and that burnt valve may have come originally from either a coil that was failing or a plug that was failing, and the mixture changed in that cylinder and burnt that valve. So at that many miles,
definitely start with the cylinder test before you spend any more money.
Yeah, and then if you'd like to keep driving you can.
At the beginning, I've had 2 different tests run, and both of them say it's low compression on cylinder 4. But you were talking about having the heads taken off.
Yep, but not at 191,000 miles. At 191,000 miles, we would never suggest. In our shop, we're not going to put heads on it because of the miles. If you put brand new heads on it or get them fixed, it's going to put such a load on that bottom end that you're already at the age where that's about a 250,000 mile motor is what we see in our shop for total life. So if you spend all that money on the heads, you're kind of past it. But the truck is still worth a ton of money. We have people that Yeah, I mean, an F-150 is 16. When people find out that, so for instance, in our shop, I had one yesterday come in, with an Avalanche, had 110,000 miles on it. It was like a 13, I think, 12 or 13, one of the last years there, and beautiful truck. But the engine had failed. It was hammering bad. And they said, well, what's it worth? And I said, well, the scrap value of this thing's probably $1,200 to $1,500 because it's so clean. It was pretty good. You sell it outright, not much more. He's like, well, that's a bummer. I said, well, why don't you fix it? Well, I don't want to put $6,500 into a remanufactured engine. I said, do you know what it's worth? Oh, it can't be worth more than $4,000 or $5,000. I said, let's take a look. So I went to Autotempest.com. They used to be a partner of ours, and it's a great place for me to just see what every place in the country is selling stuff for, because it puts all the magazines and stuff all on one site, So I typed it in, and ones with 150,000 miles that had never had an engine in were selling for $14,000 to $15,000. He said, well, that's a no-brainer. I could throw an engine in it and trade it off and make, it's like playing the stock market and actually making money.
We have private parties that will attempt and have succeeded to have a friend, neighbor that's mechanical pull ahead and just fix the valve and put it back together. But do not, at that age in life, don't spend any money to mill the heads, to just because you're going to be spending a lot of money and then you got the same old bottom end. Not a good combination.
But even on this one, if you're not doing it yourself, you're going to probably spend $3,500 to have a shop.
Yeah, it would have to be a buddy situation for it to make sense.
Yeah, just to keep her going. But
we were talking over you. What's the rest of your question there or comment?
No. Well, the two options are, for one, just tearing it down is going to cost me almost just as much as buying an engine and have the labor.
Yes.
So, in one of the guys that I was talking to, he's not quite sure he even has the tools to go that far.
Right.
Because I think there's special tools you got to have.
Setting the timing and stuff, so you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, but an engine, no, he could put an engine in it, but not necessarily pull the heads.
Right. Well, he was talking about an engine and go ahead while the engine out put two new boosters on it.
Yep.
While it's out, because that's going to cost just as much if they go out after you put the engine in. So, but my thoughts are, I kind of like the last option you gave me. I'm going to drive it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst thing, he said the worst thing that could happen, you could drop a valve through the top of the piston and
that's still,
you're done.
that'd be fine. I mean, if that happens, I think the worst thing that could happen is the catalytic converters could get plugged up by dumping some unburned fuel down there, but you're already at the point with 200,000 basically, you're already getting close to the time to change those converters, which we see a lot of them come in at 240, 250 that are worn out. So you're getting to that point anyways. And
Harold, one last thing here before we roll. The turbos, you called them the boosters, but the turbos on those are mounted down low on the exhaust manifolds. They're actually not bad to access.
And they're not too bad.
And so they're kind of expensive. So they could get by with doing a physical inspection on those turbos and making sure they're still rotating good and solid. And we've seen people put those back on before because they aren't ridiculous to get at if they failed later.
Yeah, by 8 hours or so for repair.
Overall, the truck itself, the body and the interior is perfect condition. So it's worth. I'll probably put an engine in it because it's worth it.
Yeah, it's still worth more than $10,000 probably more like 14 or 15, even with the miles if it's running good. So.
And just quick advice for all of our listeners: if you're going to go out there on this option, this is a new vehicle, lots of dollars involved. You got the option of a remanufactured engine. You want something with a good name brand warranty. And then also if you do a recycled or certified used and you start looking around, very easy nowadays to get the VIN number of the source vehicle, and you can run a Carfax if you want. If you found the one you want, you can spend a few bucks and run a Carfax and verify that you don't have somebody telling you a story on the miles, because we see way too often where brokers get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And they find people that are they put ads out on Marketplace, they put ads in the phone books, and you call the number and they're a broker that doesn't own anything, and then they're misrepresenting another product that comes from a place like ours where we actually have videos of the vehicle running, we show the miles, the tachometer, but just you should always be able to get the VIN source and check that VIN number, and you can always verify that miles on that before you buy something, because you are going to spend quite a bit of money. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Who do y'all recommend buying the rebuilt engine from?
Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated. Since you ask,
there is a lot of good reman companies out there. We've dealt over the years with AER, which is a brand that we sell a lot of.
Yep.
And we also have got Ford remans that we put in too. You always want to compare those prices.
Yep.
Can you give me a number?
We'll have to get you rolling after off the air here, but yes, we can.
Okay. All right.
Producer
Hey,
Doug will stay with you.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care. Thanks, Harold.
Thank you.
All right. Under the Hood, 866-594-4150. We're going to take a short break and be right back with more Under the Hood. Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Find us on radio, YouTube, Facebook, and podcast by searching Under the Hood Show.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show, 866-594-4150.
Oh.
And we got another hoodie to give away. Doug Backus, congratulations. You've won a hoodie from the Under the Hood Show and our partners over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. And don't forget about our friends over at Berkeley One Classics, berkeleyoneclassics.com. Your key to collector car insurance, now celebrating 50 years in
50
business.
years is awesome.
50 years of classic collector performance cars, snowmobiles, motorcycles, even a tank. No, more than one tank. They have lots of tanks. But
They
that's
can do
crazy.
it.
So we're gonna jump right back in. We're going to finish this hour off. We're going to talk to, let me see. Pick one out of the gate here. Let's talk to Dan. Dan has an 02 Suburban. Dan, you're under the hood.
Thank you, guys. I really like your show. I listen to it every chance I get. Anyway, what's going on with my old sub is when I put it in, like wintertime, I put it in four-wheel drive and hit 4 high and get up around 40 miles an hour, and it'll start kind of vibrating. And I don't know if it's coming from the front differential or if it's coming from the transfer case.
Only in four-wheel drive?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, only in four-wheel drive. Yep.
Huh. Well,
because normally I would have went right to the rear drive shaft on those things with the U-joint on there. Is just a big problem.
If it only does it in four-wheel drive, I'm going to be looking at the front drive shaft to see if it's got some joints either loose or bound up. Some people shake the drive shaft and it won't move.
Which I'm just going to say from our experience on those is not as common of a problem.
Very, very rare.
We just can't. Yeah, the drive shafts on those just don't ever seem like they go that bad.
But we've seen a number of transfer cases fail in the 02 specifically, 01 and 02. And we'll check the fluid first. If you got a vibration and everything looks good under there, the tires match front to rear, so we don't have a size differential.
That's the physical inspection stuff you can do for no cost.
Then we're going to pull that drain plug and see, because it's time to change the fluid in it, I'm sure.
Which also is no cost until you find something.
Yeah, and if you pull it and it's just chunky and black and silver pieces come out of there, there's a problem. But there could be something going on. So we would check the fluids in those differentials first. Now that front differential, if it's starting to bind up because it's had a fluid issue in it or something, moisture, it's just failing, yes, it will give you a vibration when it's in four-wheel drive. So
do you have you ever noticed or looked close enough to see if you have any leakage on that front differential from the side seals or the back seal or anything? You've ever looked at it real close?
I haven't for a few years. I've had the thing. I bought it from you guys, probably 12 years ago.
Yeah. No,
I've done it ever since I bought it. But,
that's something to pay attention to, is if they had, we've learned that through the years that those would lose fluid, and people just didn't realize it because it doesn't come out that fast. And eventually they would get low on fluid, and then it would just cause a bearing problem inside or because of heat. But, that the first place we would look, though, would be the transfer case, just to see. But if it's been doing it from the very beginning, how many miles were on it when you got it from us? Do you remember?
125. I got I've only put about 55 on it, maybe.
You might still, being in four-wheel drive, it might put a different stress on it. We might still want to check the front hubs, even though that would be typically an all-the-time issue. But just got to see where them stress points are at. Since it's a four-wheel drive issue only, most likely not. It's going to be something in the front differential, drive shaft, or transfer case, since it's a four-wheel drive only problem.
Does that help you out?
Okay. Well, I changed the fluid in the transfer case a couple of times already.
Check the front end too,
and it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, then we need to move our focus to that front differential, probably. I think because that's GM. We learned this down the road. They had an issue with some seals and the fluid that they put in them that was seeping it out, and then they would lose it. So in that era, it was a thing. So it's just something we got to watch for.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for the call, Dan.
I just can't kill it otherwise.
All right.
Keep trying.
Take care.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, we're going to jump right on and see if we can get Jim before the end of the hour. Jim, you're under the hood.
Okay. I got a 2000 Buick LeSabre, and the windshield wipers won't shut off. How big of a job is more than likely? The only way to shut off, you take the fuse out.
Yep. Well, usually you should be in luck here. Typically, when we see that, it is the wiper motor that's failed on it. We've put a lot of them on for this exact problem over the years, so I'd say that's probably one of the most likely culprits of what's going on is the wiper motor has just failed, and there's tons of them available used, new. They're very affordable yet. Not too hard to do. I mean, a lot of people do them themselves as well. So that'd be the first thing I'd be looking at would be that wiper motor.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you've tried playing around with that switch for hours on end, hoping you could find the sweet spot, and that didn't do anything?
Well, no, you on the outside of it, but you're going to replace it. What, you got to take the steering wheel out and the whole wire harness?
No. I was just talking about sometimes the switch can go bad, and but you know that usually
if you wiggle it,
if you start wiggling around, it'll stop.
Wiggle and swear at it and everything else,
and it still keeps going.
Yeah, that means it's probably not it, because usually you can make it fail again if you start fiddling with it. So you probably need a wiper motor, and that's not a hard repair. I think if you look in the book, that's less than an hour.
Okay, 45 minutes, half hour
repair. So not a hard repair, and lots of parts available for that.
Mm-hmm. Does that help you out?
What's a wiper motor usually cost from you?
Oh, you know what? On a used basis, you're going to find those as cheap as like $14 if you went out to a self-service place and did it yourself, maybe even $10, and probably on the high end, $75 for a used one. And reman or aftermarket or new is going to range from probably $40 to $180, depending on what level or what quality you're going after. So not an expensive item.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Jim. Yep. All right. Another hour in the can.
Yeah.
866-594-4150. You can call us under the hood. And in the meantime, if you want to catch us on podcast, if you want to listen to any of the past episodes, we've got, hundreds of them out there available, going back all the way to 1990. But you can listen to us on podcast. You can catch us on YouTube, and we appreciate if you would subscribe and like and all that good stuff on YouTube. I find myself watching a lot of YouTube videos lately, and I keep forgetting to subscribe, and then I think, hey, wait a second. Do I like this channel? Yeah, I'm going to subscribe to it. And if I don't necessarily want to subscribe, I'm at least clicking the like button, because that's important.
Or give them a comment and just say, hey, thanks for having this out there. This helped me.
Oh, you know what? I've noticed that most people I comment on, they comment back.
Yeah,
Take care. All right, and we're back on the air again. How about that? That was like
you did that well.
Back. I was about 1 second shorter than I wasn't as fast as I wanted to be for our local affiliate picking it up, because a 1 second is everything in radio. You want to say, take care, and have it end with that music playing and then go instead of to get and gone. But that's all right. We're back on the air.
And I've gotten chastised often for asking that one more question of a listener a caller that I shouldn't. That
Yeah.
takes us into trouble.
Now with 20 seconds left, we don't want to ask one more question because that will get us in trouble. But we do have some listeners who have asked some questions. We got to get to these because they're important.
Are they YouTube questions?
They're YouTube people.
Oh, then let's do some YouTube answers.
So Thomas wants to know, how would you fix a cracked block? Well, our answer is going to be, don't just seal it, K-seal it. Definitely. Now, K-seal has been used to fix thousands of blocks successfully, and it's a pour-in, one-time, permanent solution. Don't add other sealers first. Don't put in bars leak and a bunch of other goop and then put K-seal in. It's not meant for that. Put one in, one time.
All right, so what if
have it
this
fix
guy's
it.
talking about an actual, like a freeze crack or
Internal crack, external crack, that don't matter. Now, if the crack is so big that you can't even put water in it because you put 3 gallons in it and it's empty in 3 seconds, you're going to throw it away because it's probably cracked inside and outside, and no fixing to it unless you could maybe weld it.
Yeah,
with something.
we've seen some where they've broken and it's a very rare something or a hard to get something, and there are machinists out there that can weld cast. I'm assuming this is cast by the way the question was kind of framed. There's also people that can weld aluminum when they're broken. We see things broken in accidents or they get dropped, and they'll break something. They can be welded.
And that's a different thing. So if the cracked block is a broken ear off of an AC compressor mount or something like that, yes, weld it.
Yep. And then you'll see where people back in the day, they would grind out a valley and they would braze in. I've seen on some older stuff people tried to rescue. You've seen folks try to JB weld with if as long as it's not like in a coolant passage port or something. To stop an oil leak on a differential, on different things. You see different things people have tried to do. The one thing I see in common with a lot of those repairs, if they're not done by a hardcore professional, is eventually they do leak again. It's hard to get those things just right after they've broken, if that's the kind of crack or break they're talking about. But we've seen professional welders fix up quite a few of those because it was done commonly in a lot of hot rod stuff back in the day in the cast iron blocks, and there's some guys out there that really know how to do it. But if it's inside the engine, yeah, you're kind of done if it's that big a one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, another question on YouTube. They want to know how. They want to know. He says, "Hey guys, love the show. Looking to buy either a Jeep Wrangler or a Gladiator. What are your thoughts on Jeep's reliability? Owners seem to love them, but they always appear on unreliability lists." Well, the reason they appear on unreliability lists are because there are so many millions of Jeeps out there, and if somebody has a problem, they're more than likely going to tell you how they hate the vehicle instead of how they love the vehicle. Because if I got a tool at home, I got a lot of tools in my toolbox. And I love a lot of those tools. I haven't gone out and written a review for a single one of them. But I tell you what, if one breaks or breaks twice and really pisses me off, I'm going to go out and tell everybody how much I hate that tool.
We might hear about it.
Yeah, you're going to hear about it. So that's the thing. Unfortunately, there should be more people that tell you how good something is and not how bad it is. But overall, I like the Jeeps. I think they're very reliable. We got a lot of customers with them. They have very few problems with them. When they do have problems, we fix them, we move on.
We've seen a few scattered problems in the 3.6 Penn-Star engines, in the
ones,
in the valve trains, and in the cam areas on some of them. That was, but like I said, mine was a 17, and we had the problem, and it got fixed under warranty. But we've seen a few of them that way, but it's not an epidemic by any means. The other thing that you'll see is there's some challenges with people that with a solid axle vehicle. You can get into some expensive repairs on the front differentials sometimes. And we've also seen people that just beat them up and they're tough.
Yeah.
But they still break.
Jeeps are fun. I've got a 74 Volkswagen Super Beetle convertible. Really nice, cute little car. You've seen that thing.
The blue one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cute. Yes.
Yeah. I want to trade that for like a 79 CJ7 with a V8. It's got to be a V8.
304 V8.
Yep, it's got to be a manual trans V8, and I've seen there's probably more of those than any other of that old style Jeep.
I have not seen one of them like in the wild for a bit.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there. I saw them on
they're
Facebook
around,
Marketplace. So I've got a car that's $7,000 to $9,000 in the condition it's in. So I'm looking for a Jeep like that. So I'm kind of looking, because my wife said, I'd really like to have a Jeep instead of driving around the cute little convertible Bug. I'd rather be driving around a big jacked up, loud.
Well,
Jeep.
you can use that year round.
Well, I'm not worried about year round. I just want something to drive in the summer that's fun, but something that's taller and beefier and has a louder engine. So, didn't get a chance to own the Bug that long. But
just putting a bow on that question.
Jeeps are great.
The Wrangler, and if you're looking at the generation where the Gladiator existed, that means that you're into the JL generation. They refine that baby They refine that baby pretty good, and we just haven't seen a epidemic of problems with them. But I think there's some little naggy things that get people kind of upset about them, and that's probably why they get on the unreliability list. That's my opinion.
Jack wants to know, what's the proper way to clean an engine bay? Well, for us, Justice Brothers engine cleaner. Shiny, foamy, clean it up, make it look pretty engine cleaner. We use that a lot. That's been our choice to use. And you spray it on an engine that's warm, not hot. You let it soak into the grease, and then you rinse it off. You don't want to use pressure. This is where the proper, more than anything, the proper way to clean it is to not use too much pressure.
You don't want to be injecting water into places it was not designed to be.
Anything. So we just use a garden hose with no sprayer on the end of it, and we just kind of rinse the engine off. And if there's a spot that's a little dirtier than others, apply a little scrubbing to clean it off, and then rinse it off again. If it takes more pressure than your thumb over the end of the garden hose, it's too much pressure for the car. They're weather-resistant connectors, not weather-proof.
Not pressure washer resistant.
Yeah, not pressure washer resistant. So Jason says these under the hood thermos are cool. You made those, didn't you, Shannon?
I did, and you know what? We don't even have the press anymore. My daughter was playing around with heat transfer stuff, and yeah, we made these. And so there's only one case of them that exist in existence, and I gave some to my family members and the guys on the crew here. But that's truly a limited edition deal. But we could come up with something like that pretty easily. That's not hard.
Yeah, it reminds me. I'm not sure. He'd probably know. He listens to every show, which is awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. But I was searching under the hood stuff, hoodies, something happened on YouTube a couple years back. And I think it was Jason Spencer that I saw one of our hoodies. It popped up in my suggested. I was like, why is one of my hoodies on a show? And sure, it was Jason. They'd taken the hoodie and they said, here, I got this hoodie from the End of the Hood show. And they were looking at it, just pulling on it. And it's like, this is good quality and it's heavier than the cheap hoodies you normally get. Most places, if you order one online, they want to make money. They got the cheapest hoodie they can with the cheapest iron-on transfer, and they're just not very good. And they last a short period and people don't wear them. Well, our hoodies are the heaviest.
They're very, very good.
Gildan hoodie they make that last, seems like forever. I've got some that go back 15 years or more in my closet that I wear the crap out of. I mean, they're wore, but they still, all the logo is 100% on every one of them, even though the hoodie is faded or torn or poked holes or got grease and carpenter's glue on it. So I appreciate that review they put out there.
You can go out onto our website
accurate.
And you can buy those hoodies. They're available all the time, and we give one away most every show, sponsored by our friends at Berkeley Classics, Berkeley One.
Yeah, so yeah, that's good. You can get so if you're looking for engine cleaners in general, if you're cleaning your engine bay, we've talked about this before, but our friends over at AutoZone have a aisle that can make you go buggy. There's so much stuff in there for cleaning your car. And I like going to the stores when I walk in that aisle, and there's so many new things. We talked before.
Chris talks about how crazy he goes hypersensitive in there and just can't. He's got to get something.
Well, he's a car wax guy more than anything else, and he tries every kind I think that's ever been made. So he went in there and he says, "Yeah, they've got a wax for black cars, so they don't leave that white chalky residue if you miss a spot. And then they've got one for white cars. They've got one for red. They've got one for different shades. It's like if your car is this color to this color, choose this." And if you can't figure it out, just ask the pros there. I mean, they're going to help you out. They'll know exactly what to get you. But they've got every cleaner that you can imagine. several different kinds of engine cleaner, the waxes, all that stuff. But keeping an engine clean in a car is good for many reasons. One, you got your eye on everything. You can see where oil leaks could be. If you fix your oil leaks, then you don't have to worry about those oil leaks causing other issues like motor mounts that get rotten, hoses that rot, and then you have an AC system problem or a power steering leak because you've got a hose that rotted because of the oil. Oil is a great solvent. It's like gasoline or anything else. It will eat away stuff eventually. So clean it off. You don't have to do it very often. Even if you're on a dusty road, a once a year cleaning is usually sufficient. Non-dusty roads every couple years just to keep that engine bay clean. And if people open your hood when you're selling your car and they see that the engine is not spotless, but it's very clean, well, that can make a world of difference because they don't think you just cleaned it to sell it to cover something up. They just say, oh, they've taken care of it and watched both their cars. So we appreciate everybody watching on YouTube. We're going to hit the road and get some stuff done
Yeah,
today.
and just this last week here, we got happy birthday, Russ. Happy birthday, Shannon. We both had our birthdays this week. It's kind of crazy how that happens.
Yeah. We hit the oh boy, the days go by. You know, we were in when this show first started. When I started on this show, I was in my 20s. You were in your teens. Yeah, that was a longer than I care about to think about, but yeah, it's crazy. So
thanks for listening. We enjoy it, and we're glad to be here having birthdays and enjoying your company.
Yeah, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week under the hood. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the button, smash it, all that good
Comment.
stuff. See ya.